We're live on Facebook.
I reckon, yeah, here we go. Let's so let's see who we'll get some people chiming in pretty shortly, I reckon.
Yeah. Mate, I tell you what, I've been pushing this pretty hard along with the other projects I've been doing as well. So
yeah. It's like same here, we've got a fair bit going on, but it's all good fun, isn't it? Like we just set this up, like I just sort of called you up what, a week ago?
week
And
ago,
said,
yeah, something like
yeah,
that.
hey, do you want to jump on and do a bit of a chat on Facebook and just sort of let people jump on and ask questions and just talk about how we've come to where we are, what's sort of got your podcast going and what got Primal Connections going, and let's just sort of have it out and have a bit of a chat.
Yeah, that's it, man. And I mean, neither of us have been going all that long. So I mean, it's all kicked off pretty quickly.
It is, yeah. And I mean, that's what someone told me once, I mean, you just put the value out there, just put it out there and put the value out and just sort of not hold back really, play all in and
Yep.
just give what you've got and don't be afraid. And it's amazing what can be produced in a short time when you just do it.
Yeah. I mean, I've been blown away with the results on my end. So I mean, I never thought it would, get anywhere, but
Yep.
here I am, like even last night, talking to another podcast in the States, like,
Yeah.
it's, yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, the only way to guarantee that it doesn't go anywhere, whatever it is you want to do, is by not doing it.
Yeah.
That's the
For
only way. That's
sure.
the only way to guarantee. So, if you sort of convince yourself and you say this isn't going to go anywhere, I'm not going to do anything. We all want to be right to some degree, and you're probably going to produce that result in your life in one way or another.
Yeah.
If you yourself that.
Yeah, it's funny you say that actually, because I mean, with my ADHD and all that sort of thing, I've always had trouble focusing. So I've quit a lot of things throughout my life. And every time I've started something new, I've not gone all in, because it's like, well, I'm gonna quit anyway. That's what, history repeats itself. So no big deal. If I don't invest now, well then when I quit it won't sting as much.
Yeah, right. And the way we do one thing tends to be the way we do everything, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We got one person live there jumping on at the moment. And I'll just say, yeah, anyone else is jumping on, give us a comment, make sure that we know you can hear us and give us a couple of likes. Got another person there. Yeah, just drop a comment and let us know if you're who you are, where you're from, and we'll get this rolling.
And don't be afraid to get involved, guys, because we and ladies, because we want to hear from you. We'd love to have your input, and you want to have a question you want answered or whatever, just jump in and give it to us.
Yeah, that's it. Well, we're sort of getting into our start time now, so yeah, I guess let's kick it off. I mean, what is your podcast all about?
Not So Secret Dad's Business. It's about just dads talking openly and honestly. At this point, like, again, I've never really had a firm line of what the platform was going to be. I've just sort of winged it the whole way since October. Um, so I'm just sort of letting it grow organically.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've got mates that have been listening to it who aren't parents, and they're still taking stuff away from it. So I don't think it's just a dad's podcast anymore in a way. Although I'm just talking to dads, like I'm looking at maybe getting some mums on as well and getting a female perspective, that sort of
Yeah,
thing.
that's a really
But
good idea. Sorry,
it's
you
just
go.
a platform. It's just a platform for guys to be able to if they're not in a situation where they've got that support or those guys to be able to talk to, they could still sort of get it from somewhere else.
Yeah. I mean, like it's a dad's podcast, but we're all sons or daughters of dads, and we all know dads, and we have brothers that are dads and cousins. I
Yep.
mean, it's all it's relative to everyone, absolutely. And I know, like, I've listened to obviously, well, most of your episodes. I think I've got to catch up on a couple, but there's so much gold in it. There really is, especially the ones with me, by the way.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah. 2 episodes with Shane. Check him out.
Yeah, no, it's a great thing, and it's just like you say, having that platform too, um, and just being able to speak for ourselves as dads,
Mhm.
right? Because there's so many influencers and medias and all that out there now that say this is what dads think, this is what they're going through, but to have that platform where just about any dad can reach out to you and say, I want to come on and talk a bit about my experience, it's
Yep.
invaluable, like it's priceless, I think.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I mean, the important thing I try to emphasize is that it's not a case of giving out advice, because I'm just as dysfunctional as a parent, as a human being, as anybody else. I'm still working out this crazy thing called life.
Oh yeah, we
So
all are.
it's not a case of giving advice or anything like that. It is literally just sort of talking about our own experiences. And what I've found really interesting is that talking to everybody I have so far, it kind of gives you that moment in your head where you click and go, ah, I'm not the only one having this thought, or I'm not the only one in this situation, or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, when one thing I was told when I was like in that headspace of thinking, why is this all happening to me? Like, why me? Why doesn't everyone else get this shit? Whatever it was at the time. And someone said to me, "Well, what do you think makes you so special?" Like, that's a bit arrogant, thinking you're the only one who's going through this stuff, right? Who
Yeah.
feels this way or thinks this way. I'm like, fuck, that is kind of true. Yeah, we're all going through shit. No one's got it
But
figured out.
it's just so easy to do though, because I think what a lot of people really forget is that the only perspective we have are through our own two eyes,
Yeah,
and so we're the only ones that really know our version of us. But we also forget that there are hundreds of different versions of the same person out there, because every different person perceives us differently as well,
yeah,
because they're just as flawed, having those two windows, only set of windows to look out of, you know?
yeah, definitely. That's a really, really good point. I love that because yeah, like someone can describe you a certain way and you say, that's not me, you don't know me. Well, it is you. It's exactly what you are in their world, in their
That's
universe.
right.
And that's the role that you play in their life, which is probably exactly what you need to play in their life in most cases.
That's
We've
right.
got
And sorry, go on.
Yeah, right. We've got I was just saying we've got Sarah here. I know I'm not a dad, but I kind of cover all bases. Yeah, Sarah's a single mum in the community, and yeah, does an incredible job. She's always looking to be better and do better, and always looking for ways that she can sort of show up better and help her son out better.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a really good point too. I guess not so secret dad's business. What I'm sure you're referring to there, Sarah, is I guess it's for the mums who are dads too.
Yeah, for sure. And keep it up, Sarah. Like you're a superwoman. I've been seeing all your interaction online lately, and it's really encouraging. So keep it up, Sarah.
Yeah, I think Sarah's sort of learned a fair bit and come away since she first joined the community. Um, and she because she just sort of kicks goals and she doesn't let a lot of crap hold her back and doubt and things like that. She's just like, I want to learn this, I want to learn it, and move, go bang bang bang.
Yep. Yep. Well, I
What
mean,
qualities or benefits to young boys do you see fathers uh, need or should have?
um, that's a really good one. I mean, when they're young, I think, just let them be kids. I think having that innocence is probably the best quality for them to have. As they do grow older, though, I think it's from my perspective, it's about consistency and communication. So if they communicate they're going to do something, stick by the word. Like they've got to stick by the word. Say they're going to be there at 7 o'clock. Be there at 7 o'clock. You know, and communicate. when things are shit, when things are good. But just be consistent with who you are, be consistent with your values, and like I said, consistent with your word.
That's awesome, Nate. And I guess what I'd say is the qualities or benefits. I guess yeah, qualities is the way I sort of see that question, and it's all about the example that we're trying to set for our kids because we've all been told that we set the example and it's what we do, it's not what we say that counts. And but how deep does that go? I don't think people realize, how you handle emotions, how you show up in every day, how you handle yourself. It's not
Mhm.
just how you interact with other people, it's how you interact with yourself. And you can be vulnerable to other people in a really good sense, or you can be vulnerable with yourself and say, "Fuck, I need to man up or do better in this situation right here."
Yep,
So if you want your kids to always grow and learn, then what do you need to do? Grow and learn.
that's right.
You need to
And
value yourself enough, or you need to value yourself as much as you want them to value themselves.
yep, and in fact, I learned that one from you of all people, just I think 4 or 5 months ago. Like I said, I'm not with the podcast. It isn't an advice column, um, and so when you and I spoke and you were talking to me about what my values are and projecting those values onto our kids, I mean that's the important thing, and that's a I think what we value is what we want to pass on to onto our kids, right? And so, like you've said, through growth and learning ourselves, we're able to impart that.
Absolutely. And I mean, if you try to I mean, we set an example for values, absolutely. But if you try to actively project your values onto your kids, to the point that it becomes, essentially what narcissism is, which is just projecting your values onto others and making them saying, no, this is what you should value, this is what you should value, which has its place, which has benefits and has its time. Otherwise, it wouldn't exist. But by overdoing that and saying you need to grow, you need to learn, and sort of pushing it on them so much, then all of a sudden they're full and they're filled with all this growth and learning. It's not a void, it's not something they're missing, so it's not something they're going to look for.
Yep,
And instead, the opposite of it. So if you've got them pinned down saying you've got to grow, you've got to learn, then they don't have much freedom and they're going to probably value freedom more
yep.
and just get away from the learning and just go and maybe drink up and do whatever they want.
That's
Because
where rebellious teens come in.
yeah, yeah, that's one certain way that we can bring that up. We had a couple more people jumping on there, guys. Yeah, remember if you're jumping on, let us know that you can hear us. Let us know that you're here. Say hello, give us a like, and yeah, let's keep going. So, what is it you think that really was there a certain moment that got you spurred into making a podcast?
Um, a lot of it was through dissatisfaction with my own relationship with my dad. Um, like him and I are chalk and cheese. We don't get along all that well. Um, and of course, I became a dad 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago. And for a while there, I was just going off the idea of dad taught me what not to do. And so I was sort of trying to work on the opposite side of things. With the podcast, I did think about doing a dad's podcast years ago, but obviously with the social stigma of being an Australian man, we are
Yeah,
stereotypically men's men. So I didn't really think it would get much traction, to be completely honest with you. So again, I just sort of kept it on the back burner, and but then I started just talking about it, and people going, "Oh, mate, that's a great idea. You should do it. You should do it. Go
yeah,
ahead. Like we've not heard of something like that. You should do it." And so again, it's all been step by step. I started off with a 50-second trailer and a USB microphone that my sister bought for me.
Awesome.
And I mean, in a way, my sister pulled the trigger for me because now there was no excuse. I had equipment to be able to do it. So I gave it a go, and then people were going, "Oh yeah, so when's the first episode drop?" And so then there were expectations for an episode all of a sudden. Like, okay, so I've actually got to do this. So yeah, I had a friend of mine write some music for me, just to sort of jazz it up and whatnot. And he ended up being my first guest. He's great. He can just talk for days. I love Simon to
Yeah,
bits. Shout out
yeah.
to
He's
Simon.
got a good energy on those episodes.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, I love his enthusiasm and all that. And then it just went from there, step by step. I just went, okay, let's put another one out. Let's put another one out. And as I've done it, it's slowly grown. I've now got two microphones in the studio. I've now worked out camera capabilities, so I can do this sort of thing with you and other podcasts as well. Um, and yeah, I mean that's how it all kicked off. And through I think I've benefited from it more than possibly anybody else has
Yeah,
because I've been able to have those conversations and I've started sort of my favorite term is I've started to unfuck myself a bit. I'm starting to
yeah.
work things out, how they work properly and work out who I really am and accept myself and start loving myself as well and
Awesome.
not caring about other people's approval. So yeah, in just 6 months, it's been a massive turnaround with not just the show, but my own personal development as well. And I mean, you and Primal Connections have been a big part of that as well. You helped get that ball rolling as well. So thank you for that.
No, it's my pleasure. Well, like you say, I get so much out of it as well, and you get so much out of it. And it's funny because all you're doing, like you're not getting paid for it, you're just putting value out into the world. That's all you're doing. You're just
Yep.
like you've got all this stuff together. You've got this skill of interviewing people and talking to people, and you just sort of throw it out there. Sorry.
Yeah, well, I mean, just last night I was a guest on a podcast in the States called Dad Fiction. And after that was done, Um, if anybody's really interested, it was actually about parenting with ADHD. So if there are some parents out there that are struggling with their ADHD kids or whatever, get over to YouTube and check it out because it was really insightful.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
looking forward to that too. I still haven't had a chance. I was telling you before to listen back to it, but
yeah.
hopefully in the next couple of days I'll be certainly listening back.
But the cool part about that was afterwards we just sort of once we went off air, just sat there for an hour and we were shooting the shit. And what stood out to me is they turned around and said, what they love the most about the show is the fact that most podcasts just two people talking backwards and forwards, but I'm stopping and asking questions. I'm wanting to know more about this other person,
Yeah, that's right.
and not a lot of shows do that.
That's your skill. It's great as an interviewer. You can just sort of ask the right questions. You ask the questions that people are thinking, which is and and just sort of uncover that little bit and that little bit, which is essentially what we do when we're sort of in our own personal development. We just take one layer off, and then we find this other layer, and we keep taking these layers off or chipping away at the stone until we finally find ourselves. And by the way, I mean, it takes a long time, and it's
Mm.
like you think you're going to get to this point where you've learned all this stuff and you've used the tools and you've done all this work and you're finally going to find yourself. But the more you peel back, the more you find.
Yep.
It's all sitting there. It's always there, but you don't know it's there until you peel this layer off and this layer off and this layer, and then. But it's amazing. I mean, you how much lighter you feel. It's like each layer weighs 10 kilos off. I'll
Yep.
just quickly
Absolutely.
before we get too far down, Sarah's asked again, did you guys growing up have strong male role models though? Did they have a positive influence? Is this important for young boys to have, do you think? Or can a feminine energy fill that void? Honest answers, please. No, we're just gonna
That's a really good one.
yeah. What can we make up? I don't know. Just kidding, Sarah.
All right. Well, again, Sarah, like I say, I don't spout advice. This is purely my opinion and perspective. So leave and take what of it what you want. Um, but I mean, Go looking back, I had male role models here and there, but not a lot of them were really consistent. My biggest role model when I was growing up was my mum. Right, I spent most of my time with my mum. I didn't. Again, I never really gelled with my old man. I didn't want to be out in the garage with him getting dirty or doing stuff like that. I was much happier making Anzac biscuits with mum, right? So I do think that female energy can definitely do that. And it's just a case of like with a boy teaching them about women and how to be a man and how a man should treat not only just women but everybody anyhow. You know,
Yeah.
it's a case of learning respect, I think. And I don't think it takes a male role model to do that either. Uh, you know, a female role model can do that just as effectively in my mind.
And one thing I sort of want to add too, I mean, a lot of people are really worried about fucking their kids up, right? Messing them up in some way.
Yep.
But you and I are here because in some way we got messed up somewhere along the way. And through
Hmm.
that, we found strength and we found resolve and we found a way to get back. And we had voids that we were then driven to fill. Probably the best way that you can fuck your kids up is by not fucking them up at all and not giving them any
Yep.
challenge, not giving them any voids to fill.
Hmm.
It's just
Yep.
life. I mean, it's not good or bad. It's just is what it is. And it's what you make of it. And it's what we teach our
Yep.
kids how to handle it, right? It's how what they're going to make of it.
That's
So,
right.
I mean, I'm a strong believer that you can't control everything that happens in your kid's life, but what you can influence is how they handle what happens in their life.
Yep.
And as a, you know, especially for single mums, what can be really hard for you is constantly being in that masculine energy, in that masculine state,
Yep.
to try and fill that void. And you know, it's natural. It's what you're going to do because you have to do it because your tribe is missing that. So you kind of shift between masculine and feminine a lot more, and you don't always just you're not always able to just sink into that feminine energy and that flow. So you end up
Yeah.
with physiological issues, you know, health issues, tension, things like that. You get thyroid issues. By the way, I'm not a doctor or anything like that. This is just things that I've observed or noticed. Just let's just call it a lot of coincidences. Um, but in saying that, um, young kids will always find a male role model. They'll always find their masculine role model. Okay, because we don't have a coin without two sides. No one-sided coin exists. Every coin has two sides. So there's always a masculine and a feminine having a role in every kid's life.
Yep.
So unfortunately, I mean, there'll be kids out there that their male role model is a character on a video game, right?
Yeah. You see it all the time.
Yeah,
See it all the
absolutely.
time. And I
Um,
mean, look, I think the sorry to cut you off, but I
no,
do think having a male role model can be good. But if you're worried about, say, your son not learning the basics of mechanics, to fix a car or woodworking or sort of some of those masculine hobbies, don't worry about it. It's not an issue because I really didn't learn any of that until I got an apprenticeship. And then once I was in the industry, I started learning and hassled tradesman after tradesman after tradesman with questions. So if it's about learning skills, don't worry about it because they're going to learn regardless. Um, and like you said, by trying not to fuck them up, that's the best way to fuck them up. We all have, like you, Shane, know I love my metaphors and analogies, right? So here's
yeah,
another one for you. We all have baggage, and we need this baggage to get through this journey called life, right? It's exactly the same if you go on holiday or you go on a road trip. You gotta pack up that car or pack that suitcase and haul that bugger around with you. You're still having a great time, but you still got all this baggage you got to carry around with you too. And it's just the same in life, that we've all got baggage. Everybody has baggage. It's just how we deal with it, how we unpack it and repack it.
Yeah, awesome. Great metaphors and analogies. That's awesome, isn't it? And one last thing too, for those mums, the single mums and that out there, if you're raising, especially a young boy on your own, and a lot of you are worried about um, how you're bringing him up as a man when you're a woman, and the best thing you can do, right, and this really goes for any parent, but I'm going to talk to single mums specifically, is do the work on yourself and check your own wounds and check your own unresolved issues and unfinished business, because if your feminine energy is wounded in some way, maybe from your childhood, from your father or from your mother, or just growing up as a teenage girl, whatever it is, if your feminine energy is wounded in some way, then that is going to really affect how you bring your sons up. Okay, because generally a feminine wound comes from a wounded masculine, right? I mean, we see it a lot in the pop culture talk of, I always had a caring heart, and then someone came and broke it, and now I'm just cold. And right, that's a bit extreme, and it's not really the right way to put it, but essentially, a wounded feminine who's, let's say, been abandoned, right? That's going to really affect the way that she brings up her son, until she takes care of that wound and works through it and does the work required to move through it, come to peace with it, and not have it control her so much.
Hmm.
Because I'm talking to anyone here, that guy, when you were 16, or whether it was your dad or a long-term boyfriend or something like that, who you perceive abandoned you, until you come to grips and do the work and work through that and come to peace with it, isn't he still sort of controlling you a bit?
Exactly. Yep.
It might be a
Exactly.
hard truth for some, maybe not for others, but something to think
But
about.
that's what resentment does. Resentment is like a tool of control.
Yeah,
If you're still resenting someone, essentially you're still, if you've got resentment, you're still blaming someone else. And by putting that blame on someone else, you're releasing control of that and saying, I got nothing to do with it. But until you take control of it yourself, you're not going to be able to fix that wound. It takes
yeah,
some sort of accountability on your side as for lack of a better word, the victim, as it does them taking the other party taking responsibility. But they're not always going to take responsibility. So
yeah, absolutely. And look, you're responsible for your life. Anyone you blame for any part of your life, you're giving them all the power over that part of your life. Okay. And it's not
yep.
about saying, well, it's all my fault, I'm to blame. It's just taking responsibility and saying, well, you know what, I could have done better, and this is what I'm going to do next time. That's it. You've got some power. You've learned from it. You've turned a negative thing, or a perceived negative thing, into a benefit, because you've learned from it. And that's just the beginning. You can write down 50 benefits to whatever it is. And I guarantee, if you push yourself, you'll write down 50 different benefits.
Yep.
It's just the
Yep.
law of nature.
Easy. I think even I saw a video today of from Kerwin Ray talking about emotions, and he said, if you're going to be happy, you've got to ignore 50% of your reality because everything is 50-50.
Yeah.
Um, but with any situation, if you really sit down and look at it, you will find just as many benefits to that negative situation as you will find, um, what's the word? Things that hold you back.
Drawbacks. Yeah. Yeah.
Drawbacks. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's just the law of the universe. That's the way it is. And if you do that in a certain way, and I mean, this is where coaching really comes into its element and becomes really important, because you don't want to just be scribbling it out saying, oh, these are all the benefits, these are the drawbacks. There's certain ways to do it that are very neuro-based. All right, they're based in neuroscience, and it's the way to approach it that affects the pathways in your brain. And
Mhm.
you can have these great epiphanies in a very short time with the right way, the right work, the right tools, and the right coaching, the right
Yep.
mentoring, whatever it is. But like we say, it's about getting out there and doing it, taking a stand and say, when do you say enough's enough? When do you say I'm done? This is enough. I'm going to move forward. Do you just wait for more pain? And do you do it tomorrow when the pain's higher? Do you do it next year? Like, where could you
Who
be
knows?
next
I
year?
don't think there is an answer to that.
I'd say
But
just do it now.
one question I do have for you though, because of course, you being a personal development coach yourself, you've you've called your business Primal Connections because you focus mainly on those primal connections, the neuro pathways, and epigenetics and that sort of thing. So how come, or what made you look at that side of it more so than more of like an external thing like a lot of other personal development coaches do?
Guess there's probably two answers to that question. I mean, and one answer would be um, once I started the research and got into it and finding things and like getting my own mentors and coaches and going to events, I've spent tens of thousands of dollars on it and just studied pretty bloody intensely because once you find your spark, you just go for it. That's what I found was the internal world is where it's at. Like, and if you go in looking into quantum physics, quantum science, so down in the subatomic level, it's incredible. Like this whole external world, and I won't go right into it, but they talk about how it's essentially in a certain perspective a whole illusion, or you can consider it art because like our brain has never seen the outside world. It's
Yep.
never heard, smelt, tasted, felt, or seen the outside world. That's all just signals from the outside that it interprets. So doesn't that make everything a perception, even your eyesight?
We're living in the matrix.
Yes. And the other thing too, I guess from a young age, being outdoors and out in nature and all that sort of thing, and I had a keen interest in survival and just sort of um, our primal days and how we got through it and starting a fire with two sticks and all that sort of thing. Always had a real interest in it, and that can come a lot from my childhood too, where survival always hung in the balance. So I had this void, a perceived void that I needed to know how to survive because this could happen tomorrow.
Hmm.
But in saying that, being into that and combining that with my research, I'm like, it's and what we are talking about before about the masculine and feminine. Thanks, Sarah. Was how we're really, really not that far gone from our primal ancestors. Like we really do act the same, except we've just got computers, phones, big populations. We're very comfortable in the way that we've got this big, strong house, and there's no lion banging on the door. That's different, but we're still wired the same,
Yep.
right? And I think there's a lot of groups that sort of try and say, it's 2021. We're not the same as our primal people, and they sort of try and avoid it a lot. But by embracing where we are the same, what I've found is it's completely life changing, and you actually start to understand why you do what you do. I mean, it's
Yep.
hard for people. No one completely understands themselves, right? I think your brain would probably implode on itself if you completely understood yourself. So how can you say that we're nothing like our primal ancestors without fully understanding how you work and why you do what you do?
No, that's right. I mean, you know more about it than I do, but I mean, from what I've been able to work out and understand is that these people saying that we're not like our primal ancestors. I think, like you said, they're wrong, but they're missing the point because the difference today now is we've got so many more external stimuli that it's sort of taken over. We don't need to use our gut instinct and our primal urges all the time because we're living in a safer society, I guess. Whereas
That's
before,
really
you
interesting.
you had to be on your ball, on your game. You had to be alert because you were always at danger, and you had a stick and a stone, and that's what you had to work with. You had to use instinct to avoid danger rather than confronting it.
Like I remember a couple of years ago, I was told how animals all go to high ground when there's about to be a flood, and the ants go real fast when it's about to rain, and animals all seem to have this sixth sense where they know what's going to happen. And there was maybe it was a reporter, a scientist, or maybe it was even Dr. Carl and Triple J, right? Who was saying that because we have weather stations and because we have shelter and because we have all this now, that we've lost that sixth sense. But when we've researched people who have had near death experiences, right? People who have floated outside their body and had this crazy experience, and like the monks who have spent their whole life meditating, the shamans, the sages, the real spiritual people who just devote their lives to inner internal peace and seeing this other realm. They've got that sixth sense.
Yep.
So it's still there in all of us, but it just takes a lot more to access now because of, like you say, we've got all this external stuff going on. There's so much noise in our head and in our world now compared to back then. So much noise. And like anything, it's like, when you put a frog into a pot of water and you turn it to boil, because it slowly comes to a boil, the frog will stay in there until he cooks alive. He won't even try to get
Yeah.
out because his body slowly, acclimatizes and adapts to that temperature until it's too much.
Yep.
It's like,
And I
what
mean,
are you going to do? Are you going to just sit there in your pain and in the noise and all the shit and not know your internal world until it's just too much?
yeah, that's right. And I mean, this bullshit of saying, oh, we don't have those primal instincts anymore is kind of ridiculous because it's like going outside on your front step and saying there's only a handful of stars in the sky. But if you shut off all the lights in the city, you're going to see a hell of a lot more stars than what you can see with all the lights on.
Yeah.
So you just shut some external stuff down. You can still access and see that stuff.
I'd like to ask some people a question, anyone who watches or listens back, because I think, are you someone who purposely leaves those lights on because you don't want to see what's there? Do you purposely leave all the noise because you don't want to hear what it's what it's sort of drowning out? Because
Mm,
if you perceive, and your unconscious knows you're doing it, but your subconscious will protect you so that you don't realize you're doing it. But if you perceive more benefits than drawbacks to keeping that noise there so that you don't hear what's really going on the inside, then you'll keep it there and you won't even realize you're doing it. But all the while, what's on the inside and what really drives you and what makes 95% of your decisions, it's chaos.
yeah, definitely. Organized chaos, but it's chaos nonetheless.
It's all chaos. You can't have chaos without order.
No, that's right. And again, it goes back to that 50-50 balance. There's always benefit and there's always a drawback.
Yeah, laws of duality. It's always going on. There's always the opposite in some part of the world, some part of your internal world or external world. It's the opposite going on. Sometimes the external balances out what's happening on the internal. Those with big chaos on the inside, sometimes it's reflected on their external world. Sometimes they keep their external world in such perfect order and organization to balance out the chaos on the inside.
Hmm. Yep.
I think we all know someone like that.
Oh yeah, I know people like that. See, I'm being ADHD, one of the most unorganized people, naturally unorganized people. I'm impulsive to the nth degree. And so in order to try and sort of keep the chaos up here under control, I have to have routine, almost like a procedure to life, everyday life. I have to be up at the same time. I have to be out the door at the same time. If I leave earlier, I don't know, it sort of screws with me a bit. If I leave later, well, then I'm going to be late and I'm in the shit.
Yeah.
Um, but even at work, when it comes to the job that I do in doing wheelchair accessible vehicles, I do my job step by step.
Yeah.
And if I get stuck on a step and have to sort of look forward, like foresight's not my strong point. So if I have to move on to the next step and then come back to complete the previous, I just sort of like freak out, wires start frying, and I
Yeah,
panic. I sort of freeze. So I understand what you're saying there with everything having to be balanced out.
yeah, you find the order in the chaos.
Yep,
Absolutely. And that's why, I mean, I think things are really starting to turn around. And it's the same whether it's ADHD or ADD or whether it's autism, whether it's some other so-called personality disorder. Um, these all anyone who has this stuff, if you find the power in it, you find the benefit in it, it's actually a superpower. It's not a disability.
it is. Yep.
It's 100%. Look, you've got it. You've got it. Okay. You can sit there and sort of moan and whinge about it, which I guess people will understand, but it's your choice. If you find the power in it, you can absolutely transform it, and you transform your relationship with it. And when you do that and you transform the emotion you have connected to it and your whole perception, and you start to change the thoughts automatically, you start to change the chemicals and the neuropeptides that are released into your bloodstream as a
Yep.
result, and which then feeds back to that emotion that you have surrounding it, completely change your life
Mm-hmm.
just by changing your
Yep.
thoughts, your perception, and just by doing work the right way.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll tell you what, man, like saying that is it's very true because I mean I've found even just doing stuff like this with you and other guys, right? Serotonin's going through the roof. I haven't thought about being depressed in a while. Like, don't get me wrong, I wake up and I still have some of a bad day here or there
Yep.
where I don't have that motivation, don't want to get out of bed. I'm depressed for no reason that I can perceive. Um, but I mean, they're far and few between. When you really find something that really like gets your juices flowing,
Yeah.
almost literally, you feel so much better.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's why, I mean, for Primal Connections and why I've focused on parents and kids. I want to change the trajectory of kids from early on in life. I don't, I'm happy to do it, but I don't just want to work with people who have come so far in life and just now realize that shit, I want to do things differently. I wish I knew all this when I was a kid. I want to work with kids as well. That's why I want to work with parents and the
Yep,
connection. And we can talk too about my life and what else has really focused me towards this. It's that parent-child connection and the whole family connection
yep,
that's so paramount and change the trajectory of kids from an early age. So when they sign up for a uni course or when they choose their subjects in school, they're choosing things that light them up. And we
yep.
end up then, the whole world ends up with better scientists, better engineers, better psychologists, better accountants, because these people are doing it because they love it.
That's right. Yeah, yeah, that's exactly right. Just helping them find their spark.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's incredible, and I guess with it'll take a while. It'll take a long time to change legislation and government stuff and school curriculums and things like that. But like we were saying before, if you say it's never going to happen, it's never going to happen.
Yeah, that's right. You've got to pull the trigger and just get the
Yep.
ball rolling. One momentum is easy. It's hard to start. It's easy to maintain.
Yeah. Yep. Keep it going. Absolutely. Um, I mean, like, so for me, and growing up in a very sort of disconnected family, um, and just relying on a lot of sort of outside influences, external influences, when your self worth is so low, and you don't know your values and you don't know what sort of lights you up, you rely on outside opinions. You
Mm-hmm.
rely on everyone else to tell you what you should do and where you should go in life, how
Oh,
you should
don't I
handle
know it?
just about everything. So yeah, I mean, yeah, if anyone's watching or even watching back too, just hashtag replay and let us know what you think. If any of this resonates with you, yeah, just jump in and yell out.
Yeah, well, I'm going to chuck this up on the podcast this weekend as well. So if you are listening to this on Not So Secret Dad's Business, swing over to anchor.fm not so secret dad's business, and you will find a button there that says message, and you'll actually be able to send me a voice message so I can actually start chucking them into future episodes as well.
That's a really good idea. More interactive podcasts.
Yep, yep. Even if you've got something for me, if I've got enough there, I'll probably end up throwing together like a bonus episode of just replies just to this, you know. So
Awesome. Um, yeah, so I guess I wanted to sort of share with people too a bit about what got Primal Connections going. And, you know, if anyone wants to ask questions about that or know more about that, yeah, just throw them in there. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks for the well done, gentlemen. Aaron says so.
oh, he's a champion.
Yeah, Aaron's a great energy and he's a great guy. He's sort of always helping people out, boosting people up, and like we say, the more value we put out there to others, the more the universe seems to give us back, and the more
Yep.
we get out of it. So Aaron will be getting a lot out of life. Um, yeah, so I guess I've spoken a bit before on a couple of weeks ago on a bit of a live about one incident that sort of really kicked me in another direction. And so back in October 2009, I was out on a station at Bingara, and I was going across to Barradine to meet up with my younger brother to go on a bit of a couple of weeks sort of trip, camping trip and whatever. And we were with a few other friends. But as I got over there, I was coming up to the property, and in the first gate, I think got up to the second gate in the property because we had to go through this property to get to where we were going. Yeah, it was all very exciting, but a guy stopped me and he said, "You can't go any further. There's been an accident ahead, and a young fella's died." I said, "Oh, okay. I think it's only us coming here. Who is it?" And it's sort of, these memories are always a bit blurry because when trauma starts to set in, you're just sort of focused on one thing, not sort of focused on storing memories.
Yep.
And I know I remember it sort of clicked to him that I knew the guy at least, or I was related to him. And he sort of, he's fumbled his words a little bit and he said, "Look, I'm really sorry. Um, sorry to say it like that, but yeah, there's been an accident ahead." And I sort of couldn't work out whether, from what he was saying, whether my younger brother was alive or not. But from what I could tell, he was either dead or he was still clinging on. So I thought I need to get down there quick and hold his hand and sort of talk to him and help him through it, say what I wanted to say to him. And so I just sort of sped down there through the gates and that, and it sort of opened up and came to all these emergency vehicles there and a bit of a scene. I pulled up and I just jumped out and I said, "Where's Ben? I'm his brother." And everyone sort of dropped their head, and a couple of cops pulled me to the side and said, "Just told me the news." And it's funny if anyone's been told that sort of thing before, you probably know what I'm talking about, where it literally feels like someone's just hit you like that. Like I almost lost balance and fell backwards. I had to catch myself. And it was just these words that did that. So yeah, I still remember sort of looking at the ground and thinking, okay, there's all sorts of things like, no, it's not a dream. Yep, this is reality, that sort of thing. And they sort of got me to, I, I couldn't do much. I sort of sat down against one of the vehicles for a bit and just sort of started processing it or not processing it or whatever I was doing. I was just sort of blank. And one of the emergency crews, trying to do the right thing and look after me, he said, it's a pretty hot day. Why don't you sit in one of these vehicles and in the aircon? So I said, yeah, okay. And like, you could probably just tell me to go and walk 5 miles down the paddock for no reason. I probably would have just said, yeah, whatever. So I went and sat in the seat, and unfortunately, that vehicle was about 10 meters from the crashed vehicle, which was overturned and staring right at it, facing it. So I was sat there looking at it for about half an hour with the Hessian bag over the side so you couldn't see the body. Um, yeah, like those few scenes, obviously very, very imprinted in my memory. Um, and sort of starting to go through all the different stuff like I was responsible for him on that trip. Like, so he was 13 years old, by the way. I was about 20, and he was a passenger in the vehicle, and I had my reservations about the driver, and I sort of expressed them before the trip, and I was like, don't be silly, he'll be fine, and everything will be all right. And I sort of wanted to push back, but I didn't. Um, so there was that, and yeah, I sort of kind of went back to a house in town in Barradine there, and just sort of sat and waited for things to happen. And family got me on a plane and took me home. And um, in all that time, I was going over things like, how our relationship was leading up to it. The last time I saw him, I I was leaving to go to that station, and sort of wanted to give him a bit of a hug in that, because the funny thing is we were connected better than ever in those the last month or two. We'd started going out, shooting and camping and what a couple of young brothers would do in the country. And I wanted to give him a bit of a hug and just sort of, I'll see you soon, mate. I'll miss you. I love you and all that. But I didn't, right? I didn't want to be vulnerable like that at that time.
Yep.
That's who I was. And, not only that, I can go into more detail, but, my mum was there in the room, and I was sort of, anytime she was around, I'd have these big anxiety attacks, and I sort of I was got a bit frozen. So I let all that get to me. And that was the last time I saw him alive. So a big part of what I do now is just helping people work through that shit, so that it's not about having the courage to be vulnerable, but just not even needing the courage to be vulnerable,
Mm, far out, man.
because it doesn't really require it. It's a lot harder not to be vulnerable. It's a lot harder.
Yeah.
So I got diagnosed well down the track with PTSD, when I finally sort of said, I think I might need to see someone about this, because I had all the nightmares where he would be hurt and I'd be trying to get to him and I couldn't get to him to say sorry. It would always be too late. Um, it was always my fault in his dreams. I'd have these intrusive thoughts. So if you're sort of working away, or you're driving or whatever you're doing, you have to stop what you're doing, because you've got all these thoughts just sort of all of a sudden come in, and it might be just picturing having a great time with him, or picturing um, having a not very good time with him, whatever it is. And I'll just have to sit there and wait for these thoughts to pass and then get on with it.
Yep.
That was just a couple of the symptoms of it. And yeah, I finally got diagnosed, and I was like, well, that is what it is. And I was kind of got to work with it and live with it, because that was the perception. I mean, that was my perception at the time of everyone else, is like, once you've got it, and that's it. And you're probably, you people will perceive you as a danger, as unstable. You believe people picture you as weak, and I'm sure there's some people who do. Right? Those people who picture you as weak when you're being vulnerable, or when you're, mentally unhealthy, or whatever it is in that perception, they're the people who judge themselves as being weak,
Yep.
because we've all got shit going on. Those people have shit going on too. And if they're judging you as being weak, then that's just a reflection of how they judge themselves. So it's up to you what your perspective is and what you want to do. So I finally got the courage and got the, decided enough's enough, right? Because we can all wait for the pain to be enough before we take action, or we can decide that we're going to take action before it's too much. Okay, I was waiting, and I was probably pretty close to it was just too much, and I said, no, I'm going to go and check out this event that I've heard of, that my partner had been to as well. And I was following this guy, and it's Michael Johnson. If anyone hasn't heard of him, um, he runs the Mojo Human Performance Institute, and he's um, pretty expensive coach, let's put it that way. And I was watching a lot of his stuff, and it sort of really resonated, and it sort of started giving me a bit of hope. And I ended up just forking out the money and saying, go to this event, and it's the best investment I've ever made. I mean, within a few hours of this 4-day event, I was like, this is worth it. I think it was about 2.5 grand or something. And in those 4 days, I think it was the third day, I tackled the PTSD, and I haven't had a symptom since. I completely changed my perspective on what happened. I've changed my perspective on the reason for my brother passing
Mhm.
and what him and I both got out of it, the benefits of it. I mean, you go to anyone and say, if you go to someone who's not aware of this stuff and they've just lost someone, right, tragically, and you say, well, what's the benefits of that person dying? They'll probably punch you in the face.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. So it wasn't an overnight thing. I mean, it took me a bit to get to this point, and it took a bit of work and it took a bit of courage and faith in myself and investing in myself and saying, backing myself really enough to invest 2.5 grand in myself. Right, despite having a family, despite having bills, despite having all that shit, right, I didn't have 2.5 grand, but I still went and I found a way because
Yep,
when the demand is there, you find a way to supply it, and that's still to this day the best investment I ever made.
man. And isn't it really funny as well? Like we could be flat broke and be more than happy to get out a $30,000 loan to buy a brand new car,
Yeah,
or you know, get a mortgage that we can't afford to buy a patch of land or something. Yeah, so many people are hesitant to invest in themselves,
yeah,
and it's so much cheaper.
yep. I mean, they almost do the same thing. I mean, a brand new car will make you feel good for a bit, but the thing is, we've got that stability line, that equilibrium between high highs where we're feeling so positive and pumped up, and these low lows where we're just like everything is fucked, right?
Mm,
And when we get ourselves right up there with this brand new car, and then that first repayment comes out and we can't afford to take it anywhere, all of a sudden we're back down here,
yeah, yeah, that's right.
right? And then we realize we bought it on emotion and impulse. But if we take that same money and invest it in ourselves, then we can actually start to take control of those highs and lows and start to realize ourselves. And gosh, how far is it going to pay? How far is your return on investment going to go?
It's only
You
going to
asked
grow exponentially.
exponentially, right? You asked the greatest investor in the world, Warren Buffett, what is the best investment in the world? I mean, if you ever had a second to sit across the table with him, is that the first question you'd ask him? I think is what's the best investment, and his answer is investing in yourself.
Mm, yep. So can I ask you something, Shane? If you don't want to touch on it, that's fine. But
Yeah.
with with the PTSD after having your brother pass away the way he had, um, was I mean, survivor's guilt was going to be a factor there. Was that an impact on your PTSD, or was it a symptom of your PTSD?
Um, I would have to say, I mean, I didn't delve into it. I didn't go and see a psychologist and sort of work through it 1,500 times and just to understand it better. So I just sort of had it and I felt it and I felt the symptoms and I went to this place and I got rid of it. But saying that, I definitely had survivor's guilt and I had some weird, like I'm not talking suicidal or things like that, but I had some really weird stuff go through my brain in those years. You know, all these weird perspectives and I was like, and maybe this happened and maybe that happened and it's all sorts of stuff and it's all trying to make sense of it. And it wasn't just, I think survivor's guilt was at the bottom of the stack because stacked on top of that was the guilt of my responsibility in what happened. So I definitely was guilty. I was like, should have been me. Like, why on earth would it not have been me instead? Like, he was younger than me. He was a better person than me in my perception. Um, he brought more value to the world. Um, I mean, he could light up the room when he walked in. He was always kind. He was always lifting people up, right? And me at that time, I wasn't any of that. So then I
Yep.
was like, it didn't make sense to me. I mean, I had all that sort of survivor's guilt thoughts, but I guess stacked on top of that, like that just sort of kind of sunk into the abyss because um, our grandmother at the time, I'm sure meaning well, I think she was trying to show me how much he looked up to me, but she told him before he went to be careful of snakes, right? Right, as a grandma does, and he said, "Don't worry, I'll be fine. Shane's looking after me."
Yep.
And that hit like a ton of bricks. It
Yeah.
just sort of, I was like, thanks. But that's sort of what I was dealing with that kept me away from the survivor's guilt and things like that. Like I say, I mean, it all was all swirling around at the time. So as far as it connects to PTSD, I'm not sure. I wouldn't say it does.
Yep. Yeah, no, fair enough. So with the fact that you were able to deal with the PTSD as effectively as you did, um, that's obviously, I mean, I can only assume that would then lessen the impact of the generational trauma that you've also spoken about in the past as well, would it not?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Trauma is passed down when it's not taken care of. Okay, when we don't address it and it sits inside us, and it's basically the way one way I look at it is you've got this bunch of information, right? Because trauma is information, largely is information stored in our cells. You've got this bunch of information, right? This is the trauma that happened, and it's not complete because you haven't addressed it. You haven't found the benefits of it in it. You haven't given it closure to the point where you're actually at peace with it, and you actually wouldn't take it back,
Hmm.
right? That's unfathomable for a lot of people's traumas, right? And it might even sound cold when you think of some traumas, but I've seen amazing things come from this approach to trauma, things that you couldn't imagine. So you've got this trauma here, and when you complete it, it's it sinks away. But until it's complete, it's looking for somewhere to be completed. It's looking for its other half. And if it doesn't get it in your generation, in your body, in your life, it'll go on to the next life to try and find completion.
Yep.
Okay. Just like all the laws of nature, where everything's trying to get to its most stable form, everything's trying to complete itself. It's the same with these stories in our head and these traumas where, majority of trauma happens when we find ourselves in a situation where we find ourselves out of control, not in control of the situation. And especially for young kids, really, really young kids and toddlers that are traumatized by an event, they'll often replay it and replay it and replay it until they can understand it really good and until they can find full control over it. So they'll often, let's just say that they're involved in a trauma like a house robbery with an assault or something like that, right? So let's say there's like 3 or 4 characters, including the child. So they'll often keep replaying it in the form of different characters. So they'll play the robber, they'll play their mum or dad, they'll play themselves, they'll play their sister, and they'll just keep on replaying it in every different way until they make sense of it
Yep.
and they feel some control over it. And then we can work with them and we can talk about maybe some benefits of what happened. Like we said, they're always there.
Yeah. So help me understand it a bit better then, because I mean, I think I might have like the basic idea here, but with trauma, obviously that's going to help cortisol spike through stress, that sort of thing. Um, Now, from what I understand, depending on your hormone levels and all that sort of thing, it can actually over time change your DNA. Correct?
It changes the way that it's expressed.
Yep.
It'll
And
change the
so
way.
then,
Sorry.
sorry, and then so then that would then be passed on through genetics. Yeah,
Absolutely.
and then that's essentially how trauma that has happened to you personally can be passed on generationally because
Yeah.
it's become a physiological thing.
And that's how the effects of trauma can get passed on. So, and I mean, all this stuff, right? It lives on in our species, in our whole existence because it had benefits, and it still does. But back in our primal days, right, when you heard or saw or smelt something that indicated a bear was coming, right, then your body learns that every time you smell a bear coming, it needs to release adrenaline so you can fight it, or you can run. It needs to do this, it needs to do that, it needs to, the cortisol needs to handle stress. So now you're tuned for that, and you'll pass that on,
Hmm.
and your genes are expressing differently. And even in the DNA, like we'll go right down to cells and telomeres and how it's all expressed differently now. We need to, because otherwise
Yep.
every generation has to learn the same lesson the hard way, right?
Yeah, it
and
makes
and
sense.
that is also why I don't fully understand, we don't fully understand the mechanics of this yet, but these traumas can get passed laterally. So not just from, say, father to son, but from uncle to nephew, right? Across and down. Because I mean, what happens if the wrong person or animal in that family dies and loses that information, right? You're not going to
Yep,
lose the
yep.
information. That's why we need to pass it laterally and down so that the species can continue to survive and come up against these um, traumas or challenges and overcome them better.
Hmm.
It's amazing stuff once you get into it. And but in saying that too, the information of a trauma getting passed down in cells, because cells contain information. Right? And when your grandmother was 4 months pregnant with your mother, you already existed. The precursor cells to the egg that would become you already existed. Now, if cells carry information, then you were already getting programmed 4 months before your mother was born.
Oh man. Okay.
They'll just crack a
Man,
few people open. Let us know.
it kind of fried me a little bit, man. Mate, I'm speechless. I don't know what to say. I got to look into this epidemiology a bit more because I just, yeah, without understanding it properly, I can't fully wrap my head around it.
Yeah, I mean, if it interests people, like, get into it because it's amazing stuff. And what better thing to understand than ourselves, right? In most
Yep.
cases, some people
Again,
don't
I
want to
think
understand.
that's a big part of where unfucking ourselves and unpacking some of that baggage, healing those wounds, and coming back to where Sarah was saying of or asking about, whether boys need a male role model or not. It's when you start understanding yourself, I guess, that's when you don't really need to worry too much about that.
Yeah, yeah.
You've healed those wounds, you've learnt about yourself, and you've got enough, I think, confidence in yourself to know what values you want to pass on, what values you want to project.
Improve your relationship with nature and the universe, whatever that is to you, so that you can have some faith in it and you don't have to control everything or
Hmm.
feel you need to control everything. Let it happen. And like I said, you can't control everything that happens to your child, but you can influence how they handle it.
Yep.
Um, Aaron, awesome love, guys. Good to see simple, honest language and some truth. Thanks, Aaron. Sarah Stewart is not crying. We're crying, apparently. Um, Aaron Lucas explains why every male in my family tree has all died of drug overdoses and cancer. Man, there's something behind that.
Hey, I'm telling you, man, up until the last few years, I didn't have a lot of love for myself because I spent a very, very long time, my whole childhood, vying for my father's approval, never getting it, and then trying to find approval through my peers, and that was only ever conditional approval.
It's very hard in our Australian culture with the tall poppy syndrome.
Yeah, and so with that came drug use and alcoholism, And I'll tell you what, they're fun coping mechanisms in the moment,
Yeah,
but fuck, man, you sit back and you really look at it. I mean, I remember nights I'd go out because I was feeling like shit, and then I'd blow $500 at the nightclub, wake up the next morning, feel like even bigger piece of shit, you know?
yeah,
Um, yeah, drugs and alcohol are a good way to sort of, I guess, put a cap on that hole for a bit.
yeah.
But come morning, that cap caves in and the hole's still there.
It's almost like the pressure builds up under it and just blows it off.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Look, guys, there's a million ways to skin a cat, right? There's more than one way to skin a cat, and there's the right way and the wrong way. There's good and bad. And if you've done it the wrong way a few times, then there's benefits to that. When you've learned the wrong way to do it, and you can
yep,
help other people who you can see doing it the wrong way.
yep,
But
that's it.
keep going till you get it right. And if you want to get it right sooner, get some help.
That's it. I mean, I'm pretty sure it was Einstein that said it. He said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome.
Yeah,
So, I mean, you want to change something, you got to do something different. You know, they say try and try again, but it's not saying try the same thing again. It's learn from your mistake and then try something different
absolutely. I
to
mean,
get the desired outcome.
one thing I'd love to ask you about. I mean, when it comes to if you've drunk away some pain before, like I think fucking most people have, especially in this country, right? I definitely have. And when it gets to the point for people where they can say that, look, I'm an alcoholic. I drink from sun up to sundown. I drink for this purpose, to push those demons away, to find confidence, to whatever it is. Um, the mainstream approach to that most often is like, well, here's what it's doing to your body, and here's how your body can actually heal once you quit. And it just takes some willpower, and we'll hold your hand. And if we just tell you all these benefits and drawbacks in your body, then maybe that'll inspire you to quit, right? Has that ever worked? I mean, I'm sure it has, but what's the strike rate? It's got to be pretty low, I reckon.
I would assume so. I mean, it didn't. One thing I don't agree with in that uh, way is that situation is that you can't define an alcoholic because alcoholism is so broad, is absolutely so broad. Now, I mean, I've met plenty of guys go, "Oh, I'm an alcoholic, but I'm a functional alcoholic." Whether you're functional or not doesn't mean shit. You still, yeah, you might be functioning, but you're not functioning at your peak.
Yeah.
But you're still an alcoholic.
Where do you draw the line?
Um, that's right. So I think it comes to a point where you've got to really know it in again, know who you are to decide whether or not you are an alcoholic. Like for me, um, I'm what I like to call myself a Pringles alcoholic, right? Once I pop, I can't stop. Um, so, you know, beer one tastes just like a beer. Beer two tastes even better. Beer three better again. And once I'm
Yeah.
primed, that's it. The motor just keeps running. Um, now, I mean, I'm not sober yet. I'm still working on that and whatnot. But it's a case of I know that I have an issue,
Yeah.
and so I try to, for the best part, keep that under control. And so that might mean um, trying to make sure that rather than having the 12 or 15 beers that I might drink after work, in that night, try and limit myself to a six pack. And once that six is gone, it's gone.
Yeah.
Um, because I mean, obviously, the only cure to alcoholism is like really getting rid of it completely. Just knowing that it's a crutch and that you can't have it in your life. Otherwise, it's going to again, it's insanity. It's going to keep repeating itself.
Well,
Um, so yeah, like I mean, I consider myself an alcoholic for the pure fact that I'm a binge drinker. I sit down and I'll drink 12 or 15 beers. No problem. Won't blink at it. And then the next morning, though, I'll wake up feeling like shit, both physically and emotionally.
One thing I love to say about that sort of thing is I love to point out neuroplasticity. And that's a term that was coined in the late 60s and never really took off for a while because it was one of those things where it's very new in the field of neuroscience, and it'll flip and change so many textbooks and so many things that we thought we knew, so it gets suppressed, right? But in recent times, it's really found its traction and it's come out again. And it's the whole idea that your brain is completely changeable, completely plastic, and it's always changing. Like your brain and my brain have physically changed a lot in the last hour and 13 minutes
Oh, for
because,
sure.
and everyone who's watching has, because we're constantly changing. We've got more neurons in our brain than there are stars in the galaxy. It's incredible. And all these pathways between them that are always getting chopped and changed in order to learn
Hmm.
and in order to unlearn as well. And we can, without going too far into it, once we've got this neuro path, we can also strengthen it and strengthen it and strengthen it so it works more efficiently. Right. So if we use it a lot, we're going to make it more efficient.
Yep.
And then if we get a couple of pathways or a couple of neurons that tend to always fire at the same time, so we tend to grab a doorknob and turn it.
Yep.
So those two paths are connected. And so they're also very strong, by the way, by now, because
Yeah.
we do it so much. So with plasticity, we've all heard of times where doctors have told people they'll never walk again, and they walk within 6 months or a year. They're like completely normal, and they can't explain it. Right? They can't explain it because they haven't accepted neuroplasticity and the way that we can completely transform our brains again. So often it might be that part of their brain that used to handle walking is fucking gone, right? It's been cut out. But we can get now different parts of our brain to now adapt and fill in for that guy who's gone. And
Yep.
we never believed we could do that. So our brain's completely changeable. So that belief, if we believe that um, A, B, C will happen, then we'll always look for signs that will prove us right. If we believe that we can't quit alcohol or drugs or cigarettes, then we'll look for every reason why we can't.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why when you go to AA meetings, you stand up at the beginning and say, I'm an alcoholic. Guarantee you'll keep coming back. You can be sober for 20 years and you'll keep coming back because your brain thinks that you're an alcoholic and you need to go there. But
Yeah.
you'll never believe that you're fully sober and quit, because every day or every week, whatever it is you're saying, you're repeating it to yourself like a mantra.
Yep.
So whatever part of our brain is addicted to alcohol, whatever thought process, because addictions 99.9% of the time aren't what we think they are. If you've got an addiction that you go down to the fucking vending machine and buy a Coke every lunchtime, what else are you doing? You're getting up away from your desk. You're going and socializing. What is it that you're actually doing it for? Most of the time, it's not the Coke. When you're drinking, what is it? Some people who take up smoking do it to rebel. And when they get older, every time they smoke, they get that feeling that they're rebelling, and that's what they're addicted to.
Yep.
You flip that, you address that and change that. Quitting smoking is a lot easier. Obviously, you've still got the chemical addiction, but it's so much easier. You can kick that. That's
Yep.
fine. You got to kick the what's behind it.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, you mentioned just there before about when one synapse fires or one neuron fires, there's usually another one that might be firing at the same time. They go in unison. And what I've found is with addiction, association is a big
Yep.
one. Um, so because when you feel good, you have a beer or whiskey or a wine, whatever you might like to drink, you associate that with something. So, um, like I'm also now a non-smoker, quit smoking. So,
Awesome.
but smoking and drinking went hand in hand. Have a drag of a cigarette, have a sip of a beer, and it was one hand and then the other, one hand then the other. Now I've sort of chucked the smoking to the wayside. There's one synapse that's not firing all the time because I'm not getting that release, I guess. And so I'm less likely to head out to the garage and get a beer out of the fridge because I'm not going out to have a cigarette as well, you know?
Yeah,
And so having broken half of that association, I've started making some headway. I'm not out of the woods yet. I've got a long way to go. But yeah, I'm working on it. I'm trying to heal those wounds. I'm trying to find those other associations and cut them out.
that's awesome. And you're on the path. Just got to stay the path.
Yep. I mean, I'm not perfect. I'm flawed. We're all flawed.
Yeah, hell yeah.
So,
Like I say before, if we weren't flawed, like it'd be pretty boring. We'd have nothing to work towards. We'd have nothing to work for, right? The best way to fuck up your kids is by not fucking them up at all.
yep. Yep, for sure.
Right? We'll find the ways that we're fucked up and we'll work on it and we'll help others and we'll grow from it and we'll have a good time. I was never taught much about money, like very little about money. Never got advice or things like that. And I wouldn't change it because a lot of people get taught this is the way to handle money. But me, I had a clean slate,
Yep.
right? I hated it for a long time, especially when I was taking it, like getting stupid loans and just doing stupid shit and not handling it. And like, where is all my money going? I'm working so hard and getting nothing. I was hating it.
Yeah.
But what did it push me to do? I had a clean slate and I could take learnings from here and there and make the most of it and decide what was right.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean that can be difficult to do, but I mean again, if you can work it out, I guess. I mean that's. I guess learning about yourself is when you could then work that other aspect of your life out. Learn who
Yeah.
you are and what money is to you. You can work out how to handle it best for you. I mean, Warren Buffett. You mentioned him before. I mean, he's still living in. He's uh, one of the richest men in the world. He's still living in the same house that he bought in the
Yeah.
'80s or the '70s or whatever. Like,
And if you look in his office, one thing he tells you in one of his documentaries or biographies, he's got I don't know how many awards he's got, right? Investment awards and fucking qualifications or whatever. But he's got one certificate on his wall. That's for public speaking, a class he did on public speaking, because that was one thing that scared the shit out of him. And he was so proud when he got that. And that's the one that he hangs on the wall, despite everything else he's got.
mm,
Because that's him. That's what that means to him.
yep. Yeah, and that's what I guess that's what you value. That's what you're going to focus on, isn't it? And that's what you keep moving forward with and striving towards.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. It's God, we've covered some pretty cool topics here. Yeah, anyone else still watching there? Let us know. Let us know your experience and if you had any good takeaways from that. Same as if you're watching it on a replay too on the podcast. Yeah, jump in and you mentioned the link before. If you're listening on the podcast, you want to mention that again?
Yeah, just swing over to anchor.fm/ not so secret dad's business. And yeah, you'll be able to click a button there that says message, and you'll be able to leave a voice message for me. So you can do that on your phone or on your PC or I mean, we've got the internet, so we can do it any which way. Do it from your tablet, do it from your smart TV. If you've got a smart fridge, do it from there, man. Like, I mean, it's easy.
Yeah, that's
So it's
it.
yeah,
Take the first step.
anchor.fm. Yep, anchor.fm/ not so secret dad's business. Otherwise, you can find the podcast on Spotify, um, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Breaker. There's a handful of other platforms there. And if you do go looking for it, do me a favor, click the button that follows, subscribe, rate, review, because it helps me get up in the charts, it helps people find the show easier.
Right. So just by doing that, you're helping others find something that they might need, find a few nuggets of gold that can transform someone's life. That can
Yep,
just be that one little spark that changes the trajectory and sends someone on their way.
that's it. And all it takes is one little click. It's no effort. It doesn't take any time out of your day. Listening to the episode is going to take more time out of your day than clicking the button, man.
Yeah. And yeah, same. You guys too. You listen on the podcast, Primal Connections. I'm on Facebook. We've got a website, primalconnections.com.au. We're on Instagram as well. More active on Facebook. We do lives almost every day. I've got workshops too. I don't know if you've got any listeners up in the Sunshine Coast, but we've got a workshop coming up there about a month from now, April 11th.
Yep.
We're also taking expressions of interest for workshops in Newcastle and Sydney. So these are workshops where we sort of go over. You can bring sort of kids along as well. Bring your kids, and we go over finding their spark. We go over how you are connected to them and how you share your nervous system and how they learn about emotions from you, which is an incredible insights to neuroscience and the mirror neuron system, and how they actually, what we were talking about before about setting examples, how they actually set us up without us or themselves really knowing that they're doing it. They set us up to teach them how to handle different emotions that they can't figure out. We go over that. We go over helping them find their spark, helping them find their purpose and yourself as well. So, guys, if that's worth something to you, get in while it's still pretty cheap, while the prices are still pretty cheap, right? The value that you get out of it is not cheap, but the price is because Primal Connections is still young. Okay, guys, I only started sort of really launching things in August last year, so it's still young. We're still getting it out there, so take advantage while the prices are cheap. And if that means something to you, get in it.
Yeah, well, definitely. I'll be interested in some of the Newcastle or Sydney based sort of stuff. I'd like to get up to sunny coast and do some stuff up there too. But I mean, it's just it's not, what's the word? It's just not feasible.
Yeah,
It's not practical. So yeah, if you start setting something up down this way in Sydney or even Newcastle, like I'd love to join in and be a part of that anyway. So
that'd be
yeah,
awesome,
hit him
man.
up, guys. Hit him up because you're going to get so much out of it for such a small price.
Awesome. It's been a real pleasure, Nate. And thanks for everyone who's chimed in. People who've left the comments, Sarah, great and active as always. Aaron, both the Aarons, Dennis, Scott joined in. Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for your support. Thanks for jumping on. I hope you got something out of it. Let us know if you did. Same as on the replay, same as on the podcast. Make contact just to say, hey, thanks, guys. You made me realize this. All right. Or,
Yep.
hey, whatever you think. Hey, I think you need to stop talking as much. I think you need to stop breathing into the mic or whatever. I don't think either of us have done that. But yeah, Aaron, mate, thanks a lot. Thanks for your compliments. And yeah, I can't wait to talk to anyone who wants to make contact.
Yeah, thank you for this as well, Shane. This has been a killer of an hour and a half. Really got away from us, but thank you for sharing some of your deep stories. And I mean, at one point there, man, you had me swallowing golf balls. So I think I've got a fair bit to unpack myself now.
Awesome. That's what it's all about. Let's keep
Yeah,
moving forward.
that's it, brother. Good on you, bro.
All right, man. Well, I'll probably talk to you soon, Nate, and I'll listen to your podcast on dad fiction. Dad fiction.
Dad fiction. Yep.
Yep.
And they're on YouTube, so you can actually go there and watch the video too if you want. So that's there. Otherwise, that's also on Spotify and Apple and all that as well. I found that they've got some really cool stuff up. So Any other dads that do want to have a look at it, check them out because Ryan and AJ just are such a pair of characters, man. So yeah, but look, thank you for this opportunity with you, Shane, because it's just been awesome.
Thank you, mate. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone.